Last week in Michigan politics, global markets reeling after a new round of U.S. trade tariffs were signed this week. We take a look at how they could impact the local economy and your wallet. Plus, communities in northern Lower Michigan recovering this week after a massive ice storm swept through the area. What the state government is doing in response and what resources those affected can access. And can police in Michigan search your car just on the smell of marijuana? The state's Supreme Court weighs in. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on your side rundown. And we begin with this week with the news of President Donald Trump's newest round of tariffs that will take effect in the coming days. As markets took a nosedive Thursday following the president's Wednesday announcement, it had many wondering this week what this could mean for our local economy. I spoke with several local experts Thursday who said all the uncertainty was already having an impact.
It's just that uncertainty that is out there. It's hard to plan for that.
That's the feeling for many as markets grapple with the impact of one of the latest major actions out of the White House.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
On Wednesday, President Donald Trump signing a new round of economic tariffs set to take effect in the coming days. A 10% minimum rate put on nearly all imports to the U.S., with higher rates for some countries. Tariffs that the president has described as
reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that.
The administration asserting the effort will work to balance the nation's trade deficit while also revitalizing and incentivizing American production. But a positive tone from Washington isn't being felt everywhere. On Wall Street, the Dow dropping over 1,600 points to its lowest since September. And with 25% automotive tariffs announced last month now in effect, automaker Stellantis, according to ABC News, announcing temporary layoffs at plants in Michigan and Indiana.
That's sort of the tip of the iceberg. Kind of on an average, we could easily see average vehicle pricing going up $4,000 to $5,000 per vehicle.
Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan's second largest city,
I would say the number one word is uncertainty.
The local chamber saying it's been hearing from members in the business community about how that uncertainty is impacting their plans.
That's putting some of the projects on pause. Some investments they're thinking about making. They're concerned about the increased cost it's going to have on materials and how that will impact a wide variety of industries.
But how could it impact you?
Where do you think Michiganders specifically are going to feel the biggest impact?
The grocery store. 60% of agriculture, vegetables, fruits, those type of things come out of Mexico.
It's an impact experts believe could spread elsewhere into people's everyday lives, even into areas you may not expect.
Insurance, your car is now worth more. You're paying more for it. The value's gone up. You're going to pay more in insurance because the replacement value now has gone up. So it's all these little things that will start adding up fairly quickly.
And now to your voice, your vote. Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, a Democrat, has announced her campaign to replace retiring U.S. Senator Gary Peters in 2026. We dug into the news and the current landscape as she made her announcement Wednesday morning. Well, first major entrance into this race, we've heard rumblings of potential runs from Republicans like former gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon and last year's Senate candidate Mike Rogers, but nothing official from there yet. But a key opportunity for both sides of the aisle here. McMorrow is someone that has established herself as sort of a working class firebrand persona, elected to the Michigan Senate in 2018 and going viral just a few years ago for a speech she gave on the Senate floor where she criticized at least one Republican senator for accusing her of wanting to groom and sexualize children due to her advocacy for LGBTQ rights. In her campaign announcement, she said now is the time for new leaders in Washington.
We need new leaders because the same people in D.C. who got us into this mess are not going to be the ones to get us out of it. I'm Mallory McMorrow, and yes, I'm running for U.S. Senate because we don't have a minute to wait.
But of course, this announcement coming against some of the newest context we have, the first electoral tests, if you will, of the second term of President Donald Trump, and how that may be playing into state-level races. Last night down in Florida, for example, those two special elections for House seats for very Republican districts, Republicans won, but by narrow margins than their predecessors back in November. And just across the water from us over in Wisconsin, the liberal-backed candidate for the state Supreme Court winning by about 10 points in the state Trump carried 5 months ago. Off-year early elections might not necessarily be reliable indicators because turnout is much lower usually, but this was reportedly the most expensive state Supreme Court race on record in the U.S. So some are definitely regarding this as a test and a sign as to what may be to come in those all-important midterm elections next year, where McMorrow hopes to be on the ballot for this critical Senate seat. And just one day after she made that announcement, I spoke one-on-one with McMorrow about her new campaign and why she's aiming to make the move from her current seat. When I asked her in part what she felt she could do from the U.S. Senate that she can't do in her current seat, she mentioned two themes.
I've been holding roundtables all across the state with entrepreneurs, economic developers, small business owners who want more access to federal grants, support for innovators and entrepreneurs. And that's something that we have limited capacity to do within the state. And then another big issue for me is gun violence prevention. I have led on this in the state Senate at a moment when Washington has not. We see what happens when there's inaction on the federal level, that this is a patchwork approach that has really harmed our ability to make real progress here, so that we know that when you send your kids to school, that they're going to come back home in a way that really matters to Michiganders.
And now to the ongoing cuts being sought by the federal government and the potential impact on veterans and the people who work to take care of them. Earlier this week, VA Secretary Doug Collins faced questions as he toured the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Battle Creek. I spoke with Collins about how the department will continue to function should the goal he signaled the president had for cuts be put into place. Battle Creek's VA Medical Center playing host to one of America's highest-ranking officials on Monday, Veterans Affairs Secretary Doug Collins.
Battle Creek is an outstanding facility in which they do a lot of great work, and especially in the areas in which are most pressing on my mind. That's the mental health issues, that's our suicide issues, that's our homelessness issues, and just taking great care of our veterans here in the catchment area that they have.
Collins touring the campus and presenting 6 employees with awards for their work. But the visit also comes as Collins has indicated the department could be set to cut tens of thousands of employees. A goal, he signaled, was set by President Donald Trump of a roughly 15% force reduction.
Now, there's one thing that's going on around everywhere I go, and I'm just going to address it up front. No disability benefits are being cut, and no benefits of anything are being cut, and no health care budgets are being cut.
It's a goal that's concerned many in the region as to how it could impact care. But it's one that he and others believe is or should be about efficiency.
We know that there was a massive increase in employment that was happening, and as Doug pointed out, that doesn't necessarily mean there's been better care that's come with that. So again, it's got to be about efficiencies.
As a number of private care offices in West Michigan had closed in the last year, many could still be searching for care from places like the VA. Collins responding as to whether the VA would be able to handle an influx even with a force reduction.
So what we're trying to do with when we look at our staffing, we look at our manning positions, we're saying how can we actually bring people in if we have issues that say around here that need more in our VA system. Then we're going to be able to move folks who may not be or may be underutilized in some areas, move them to others, and take away positions and move those monies to where we need to go.
Due to what it's calling historic threats and cuts to federal funding, Planned Parenthood of Michigan announced Wednesday it would be closing some of its health centers in the state and consolidating others. In a release, the organization saying it would close 3 health centers located in Jackson, Petoskey, and Marquette. Those are expected to close at the end of the month. Then early next month, they are expected to consolidate 2 centers in Ann Arbor. The group also saying they will reduce staffing by 10% as they look to remain sustainable. To make up for the restructuring, it says it will work to expand its virtual health center in the coming months, including offering telehealth 7 days a week. Michigan's unemployment benefits are increasing for the first time in more than 2 decades. The changes are from a bill passed by the Democratic legislature last December. They took effect this week, raising the maximum weekly benefit from $362 to $446. In 2026, that will increase to $530, and in 2027, it will increase to $614. The weekly amount will then increase in years beyond based on changes in the Consumer Price Index. The duration that benefits can be received is also being increased from 20 to 26 weeks. This week, ice storms in the northern counties of the Lower Peninsula caused widespread damage and power outages. The ice storms had left tens of thousands without power and closed major roads for several days. Monday, Governor Gretchen Whitmer declared a state of emergency for 10 counties impacted by the storm. And a day later, she signed an executive order adding Alcona and Antrim counties to the state of emergency declaration. Michigan National Guard were also deployed to provide more personnel and specialized equipment to recovery efforts. Road crews from across the state, including Kent and Ottawa counties here in West Michigan, were helping clear debris from roads. Both Governor Whitmer and Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist joined first responders to survey the damage in northern counties. Whitmer helped serve meals to people at a shelter, and later in the week, Whitmer signed an executive order declaring an energy emergency in the Upper Peninsula, suspending certain restrictions to increase the flow of fuel and other supplies. She said that the order will allow expanded flexibility for truck drivers to ensure fuel can be delivered to communities. Tax relief is also available for property owners in those northern counties affected by that ice storm. People there are now able to request more time to file state taxes and pay tax bills with penalties waived. The 12 counties this applies to are on the screen, and the full details about the tax relief are on 13onyourside.com. Ever since Michigan legalized recreational marijuana in our state 7 years ago, it's still been illegal to drive under the influence of cannabis. But whether police can search your car simply based on the smell of marijuana is now changing. Coming up, what the state Supreme Court ruled in that major decision out this week and what it could mean for you. One of the latest moves from the U.S. Department of Education had some experts this week in Michigan saying it could stop millions of dollars from going to local school districts. Some believe this will harm kids trying to learn in our state, but the federal education department believed when it comes to these specific kinds of dollars, it was about time this action was taken.
These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are actual children who are being harmed by these actions.
Pushback among education officials and advocates in Michigan, as some warn school districts across the state could lose out on combined millions in federal dollars.
This pulls the rug right out from the schools.
The Michigan Department of Education saying it received this letter from U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon that changed the deadline for schools to put money down on certain projects and still get reimbursed by federal COVID relief dollars.
We have old ventilation systems that are pumping out unsafe air that our kids and teachers are forced to breathe every day. And so these schools are rightly trying to make these much needed upgrades to provide students with safe and healthy learning environments.
While some had sought an extension until March of 2026, the letter sent last Friday changed the deadline to last Friday. As a result, the Michigan Department of Education said schools around the state could be left to foot the bills to honor contracts.
What's really left local schools in a bind as far as what to do. Some have already committed some of the funds and will need to figure out what other programs to cut, including educational programs to make up that funding. Others have contracts in place.
In a statement to 13 on Your Side, a U.S. Education Department spokesperson saying in part, quote, COVID is over. States and school districts can no longer claim they are spending their emergency pandemic funds on COVID relief when there are numerous documented examples of misuse. Blasting the Biden administration's extension, the statement later went on to say, quote, "It is past time for the money to be returned to the people's bank account. The department will consider extensions on an individual project-specific basis, where it can be determined that funds are being used to directly mitigate the effects of COVID-19 on student learning." And the Michigan Department of Education clarifying later this week that it had paid over $20 million to the districts already, with roughly $18 million that had not and may not now be paid, but that all roughly $40 million in the MDE's view was in jeopardy. Later this week, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Michael Rice announced he is retiring. Rice has been in the position since 2019, leading the department through the pandemic and the immediate recovery after having been a superintendent in Kalamazoo. As part of a release announcing his decision, Rice said in a statement that family members were growing older, but that beyond the coming year, he expects to, quote, return to working eye level with children. Just as they appointed Rice, the State Board of Education will be responsible for appointing his replacement. The 8 voting members of the board are made up of 6 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Rice is set to retire on October 3rd. A protest was held in downtown Grand Rapids Tuesday against banning books in public schools. This all took place before the Michigan Court of Appeals heard arguments in a case that may determine the future of several books in one public school district's library. 13 on your side's Jeremiah Brown has the story.
Protesters gathered outside the Michigan Court of Appeals as judges heard arguments between Rockford Public Schools and a group calling for the banning of library books they believe to have sexually explicit material. The group, called Parents and Taxpayers Against Pornography in Rockford Public Schools, filed a lawsuit in regards to 14 library books.
And so if this court will look at the law and clearly follow what it says, there is no right under the law for the school to have disseminated these books in the library.
The lawsuit was previously dismissed by a Kent County judge in the fall of 2023. In a statement, Rockford Public Schools says its libraries offer a wide range of books that appeal to different students based on age, interests, and personal struggles, saying while not every book will be appropriate for all students, none of the books are unlawful or pornographic as the plaintiffs claim. Today, the school district's attorney said these materials must be looked at in their entirety rather than individual snippets.
The way that it's presented in the complaint is they just took little snippets out of the book, right? And that's not the way that the statute requires the content of the book to be analyzed. You have to analyze the book as a whole and determine whether as a whole it lacks any serious literary, scientific, educational, political, artistic value.
Prior to the hearing, demonstrators gathered outside saying that banning these books silences diverse experiences.
So it's not just books about obscenity, because that doesn't even exist in our schools, but now it's books about lessons about not bullying, and now it's lessons about you might have mental health things to support, and so everything just keeps getting stifled.
We just need to be able to cut through to what's really happening here, which is putting our First Amendment rights in jeopardy. It's silencing speech. It's taking away folks' opportunity to learn, to have access to information.
While others came in support of banning the books they claim to be pornographic.
No matter how the judge rules, I hope that parents will realize that their children are being affected by this. I don't have any kids in the public school system anymore, but the kids who go through there are being raised to believe that it's okay to look at pornography.
Some of the books the group is looking to see banned include Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eyes, John Green's Looking for Alaska, and The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. A full list and the district's full response is on our website. Meantime, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel is joining a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. It claims the department and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. illegally terminated $11 billion in federal health grants nationwide. The AG claims Michigan is losing out on more than $379 million. She says the money would have gone toward vaccine clinics for children, mental health services, and opioid abuse intervention. Nessel also said the sudden cuts have created chaos for health agencies planning on the money. 23 other states and the District of Columbia are also part of the lawsuit. Beginning April 4th, Consumers Energy electric customers, many of them saw an increase in their monthly bills. This was due to a rate increase of about 2.79% for residential customers approved by the Michigan Public Service Commission in March. AG Dana Nessel intervened in the case and takes partial credit for reducing the initial rate increase request by over 50% of what was asked. This week, Consumers Energy made a filing announcement to the commission, alerting it that the utility company intends to file a new rate request. Following the filing, Nessel announced her office would intervene, saying, quote, "My office will continue to hold Consumers Energy and DTE accountable before the commission and expose again and again the unjustifiable costs they try perennially to foist upon their bill-paying customers." Consumers Energy said they told state regulators they intend to file a rate request no sooner than June 2nd. Police in Michigan can no longer search a car without a warrant if the only reason for the search is the smell of marijuana. That's per a ruling by the Michigan Supreme Court. The ruling comes nearly 7 years after voters legalized recreational possession and use of the drug. The majority opinion says the smell of marijuana, quote, "no longer constitutes probable cause sufficient to support a search," end quote, for something possibly illegal. In the case the ruling was decided, the court threw out gun charges against a Detroit man. 13 on Your Side has been covering the story of a Michigan couple who were imprisoned in Mexico for over a month. Their family had gotten to work sharing their story, and even a member of Congress got involved. Now this week they're back on U.S. soil. We were there as they touched down and have their reaction to their release. That's next. A Michigan couple who had been imprisoned for over a month in Mexico and had their story told to the point a member of Congress got involved have now been released. The Akeos landed in Lansing late this week, and our Julia Gorman was at the airport when they touched down along with the Akeos' children.
Just an unbelievable moment here in Lansing as Christy and Paul Akeo stepped off the plane behind me and were reunited with their children, Lindsay and Michael, and their spouses. Also, of course, joined by Congressman Tom Barrett, who they say was key to getting them back here into the United States. The emotions and the things they had to share were just surreal for everyone involved. High emotions, lots of hugs, and just that sense of, I can't believe this happened, and I can't believe it happened so quickly. We were able to speak with Christy and Paul and also with Congressman Barrett just about what the last month has looked like and how they're feeling now that they're back in the U.S.
I'm so happy
We're just
to be
thankful
back.
for the support. I mean,
our kids, I can't say how proud I am for what our kids have done. The people they contacted, using social media to let people be aware of what was going on, because we didn't know what we were going to do.
I told them when I met them, and I told their family, if my mom and dad were detained in a Mexican prison, I would want somebody to do everything they could to get them out. I was committed to that. We worked closely with the State Department, hit the ground running in Mexico, met with them immediately upon our arrival, got to work with Mexican authorities, and then worked to broker an arrangement and a deal to get them out, and I'm really proud and thankful we were able to do that tonight.
What do you guys think the sort of first thing you're going to do once you're out of here?
I'm going to go take a shower. There were no showers there. You had to, and if you could take a shower, it was cold, and you only had like a minute and a half or
it was
whatever.
A maximum secure facility.
It was, yeah, they told you what to do and when to do it.
Now, Congressman Barrett did say that this case is over against the Akeos, that they are no longer facing charges. We're still working to learn a little bit more information on what exactly happened to get to this point, to get them back here in the U.S. He did also tell us, though, that the president was aware of this situation and that he is extremely happy that the Akeos are back here in the U.S. Reporting in Lansing, I'm Julia Gorman, 13 on Your Side.
And the Quintana Roo Attorney General's office released a statement about the Akeos' release, saying all charges have been dropped. They say, quote, the defendants agreed to repair the damage to the lodging center by mutual agreement validated by a judge who decreed the dismissal of the criminal case. adding that the hotel chain says it will use the payment as a donation to 3 nonprofits. It is unclear how much money is involved and what those charities are. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.